this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. A few admin things. The comments about the text boxes, you know, the pop-up text not being very readable, I believe have been dealt with now. Just putting a border around it seemed to work great, so I don't need to worry about that anymore. Thanks Iris for getting in touch about the plants. Jen McCallum, you still need to send an email, or I'm not sending the plant without confirmation of address, so that's still outstanding. I'm hoping to pack some orchids today. I'm certainly going to get the big box done. Basically, I think it clears space, you know, and it did dawn on me that there's something like 15 or 16 plants to go. And they're going to leave space, which is good because it's going to be another little set of incoming during the week. You'll be surprised what that is as well. Well, not necessarily, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, you know, there'll be 2 reasonable sized mounts gone. Quite a few pots and various things that hang around and get in the way. And I actually threw 3 plants out yesterday. You know, this is an ongoing thing, which is going to move a nice little segue into the subject for today. If I just tip the camera over and point it down there, those of you that know the grow room well will see a big gap there on the floor. They're both gone. Fed up with looking at them. Now, unfortunately, one of those was once a nice plant, the Dendrobium hancockii, with the lovely, long-lasting, waxy yellow flowers. Yeah, well, that was then. This year, I think I had 2 blooms, and it grew no new growths whatsoever, and didn't branch. I had a look at I thought there's got to be something up. It's going to be roots, isn't it? So I had a look at the roots, and they basically died. So the plant just went. That giant epidendrum that I got in the raffle, that was due to go back to the raffle, well, there ain't going to be a raffle probably till I don't know when. And it had reached here. So it was actually 2 meters tall. No blooms, just a long silly growth. So I thought, well, you've had your day, you can go. Cost me anything, and I don't think it's ever going to be anything any good. I was only keeping it to pass it back, if you see what I mean. So that's gone. And a bit sad, but the Renanthera vanda hybrid that got the rot in the crown not long after I got it, well, it came with it, it just developed after I got it. That dropped its last leaf yesterday, so I just chucked it. When I took it out of its pot to get the little basket that it was in, because I didn't want to throw that away. And it did have 4 tiny new growths from the base of the plant. And I thought, oh, at least you're trying. And then I thought, yeah, and that makes you about 4 years away from flowering, maybe more. No. So that's gone as well. So, yeah, so a little bit of a clear out. Anything that's hanging that can go is always appreciated because that space is now getting pretty filled up. And I had a comment, was it a comment or was it in an email? Anyway, it was a question about thoughts about grow lights for the winter, and did I think they did any good last year? I would say yes, because I think I have to. Do I really know that? No, I don't. They were a lot of faff getting set up, you know, then turning them on, turning them off because they weren't automated. It's a lot of faff, and I'm not sure it actually did that much good. In theory, it must have done. You know, if you're keeping your day lengths up around 11, 12 hours instead of slowly but surely shrinking down to 8, it's got to be doing some good because it's keeping things in their natural sort of way. It's a lot of faff. I will probably set them up again this year, but there's a lot more plants on mounts and hanging stuff this year than there was last year. That creates more of a problem, because they have to go somewhere, and they can't go close to the lights, they'll burn. So I'll think about it. Stuff to come. Anyway, plants that got thrown out. Subject for today. As we've been growing for longer and longer, do we lose less plants? I'm going to circle round that, because the simple answer should be, well, of course we don't lose so many plants. We're getting better at growing them all the time, aren't we? Yeah, it's not that simple, is it? It never is. Now, if you've got a relatively small growing environment as part of your home, and it involves a few windowsills and perhaps the odd shelf or surface that's not too far from the light, you probably lose a lot less than I would out here. And there's a reason for that. I bet you don't grow the variety that I grow. And therein lies the problem. The longer you grow, the more you just branch off every now and again and think, oh, let's try growing one of those. Let's try a couple of those. And that venturing out into the, it shouldn't be unknown, you should do your homework, but into the less known for your growing environment and your capabilities and everything else that collectively comes together as you, the grower. The more you venture out, the bigger the risk. If I had a nice bright apartment, I would probably be growing a few types of dendrobiums, phalaenopsis and some cattleyas. I probably wouldn't be growing much else. And how many of those would I lose? Virtually none. And this is what I was saying. So if you've got a relatively confined environment and growing types of orchids, you're less likely to lose stuff than somebody who's got loads of different types, especially if they're all trying to be grown in the same area like I am. I mean, I've got boundaries, I've got cool growing stuff, I've even got one cold grower in here that shouldn't even be alive really. So I'm pushing a boundary downwards. They should be cool growers. They do not like my summer, especially as we've just had yet another heat wave, which finally is well and truly forgotten. But then I've got some warmer growers in here. I've got two Psychopsis and my Renantheras. They're going to be a worry in the winter, but this winter I set my thermostat at 12 last year, 13 the year before. I went down a degree for the previous winter. This year it's going back up to 14. I'm not going down so cold. Mainly because I had a look at the resting type dendrobiums that I've got that like that cool, bright, almost dry winter rest, drier winter rest. And you have a look at the environment they come from, and it turns out they don't get that cold. What they get is quite a hell of a difference between the growing season and the winter. It's the difference, not the actual temperature, if you see what I mean. You know, if they're getting daytime temperatures 27 to 32 and it drops down to 18, that's quite a drop, isn't it? That's not cold. Yeah? So looking into this, I've only got a couple in here that do actually drop down, you know, what I would call cold for orchids, 10 to 12 degrees, possibly lower now and again. But I'm not prepared to keep all the others at that temperature for those couple. If they decide they're not going to bloom as well, so be it. But I'm going to try and look after the others a bit better by not going down quite so cold. So that's that. But yeah, we have to stop and think about what we're going to grow. And how far off our centre ground are those choices? Centre ground being your average environment. So that includes light, airflow, humidity and temperatures. You know, those are they, and combinations of those. And some people, you would say, are lucky because they have several choices, like a north-facing cool room windowsill and a warm living area type warm south, southwest, southeast facing big bay window with huge big windowsills, for instance, in the same home, in the same house. There aren't going to be that many people who've got 2 or 3 greenhouses that are all different, although I do know one that I may be going to see tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, if I had a property with grounds all around it that was mine and I could do what I like, I would have a lean-to greenhouse on the northeast facing side, if there was one. If not, the north facing side or the northwest facing side. Some part of a house has got to be facing northish, and potentially zero sun, or not more than an hour or two either first thing or last thing. That place would stay cool. Its maximum temperature would be the outside temperature. I could grow cool things then. Nice bit of airflow, good humidity, stonk up the old Draculas, Masdevallias and the like, and my Restrepias in my case. Not many people grow those. Can't think why, they're easy. To me, they're easier than Masdevallias and Draculas, and yet their requirement for humidity is stated at 90 to 95%. Well, mine don't, I was going to say mine don't get that, but lately they've been getting that overnight. So, you know, a third of the day is at that percentage. So I would have a cool grow space, and then I would have my normal grow space. Now I'm lucky here, because it's part of the house. I can get away with quite a lot of heating costs in the winter by taking some of the heat from the house overnight when I don't need it. I'm tucked up in bed, bobos. But the sun doesn't come over the house. This faces effectively southwest. So the morning sun doesn't get here until mid-morning. And as we head into winter, that time changes a bit, but it's mainly because the clocks have changed, not the position of the sun. Just because you change your clocks an hour, it doesn't move the sun, it just moves your clock. So yeah, the sun comes round here when there is any, you know, sort of late morning, and then it stays until it sets. So this place here is in the sun quite a lot of the day. So this is intermediate to warm. In the summer, this could easily be categorised as warm, except that because we're in the UK, and I was chatting to Zaina about this, she grows warm. So she's up that higher end of intermediate into the warm section. She has to keep her heaters on through the summer because it drops down below the required temperature at night. And that's quite a thing with the UK that you tend to forget. You know, a warm growing environment should not go down below 18 degrees. You know, well, we get summer nights that go down to 12, 13, 14. Yeah? So, you know, so if you grow up the warm end, it's expensive. The heating costs, you know, energy costs are always expensive. And you open up some doors to some quite interesting orchids to grow up that end. But you cut yourself off. I mean, I grow intermediate fundamentally, and I can get away with cooler growers, I don't think you can get away with cooler growers if you're in the warm section, that's for sure. So I'm hoping to get away with my, you know, my Psychopsis and my Renantheras and the few Phalaenopsis I've got out here. Oh, one of which has got a bloom. I did say this one. What a mess this plant is in. Let's just show you the leaves first, just have a look at the leaves. They're in a hell of a mess. They're all patchy and blotchy and everything, but the new ones, or new one, is not quite so bad. And it did something strange, because where the spikes come out, it grew a leaf there as well. This lowest leaf down here is a new one. It's only just grown out. But this bloom on this little Phalaenopsis is absolutely gorgeous. The delicate pattern, lovely shape, nice colour on the lip, and this bloom's regular as clockwork. But there's something fundamentally wrong with the plant itself. It's not happy. Even the latest leaf was clean, and now I can see some little marks coming on it. So it's not a happy plant, but it blooms and it grows, and it's not touching anything else. Just in case we do a bit of that in here. Yeah, so at the end of the day, if I had an environment suitable, temperature range, medium humidity, and a reasonable light, you know, that I could go from mid-light to semi-bright light, and I grew Phalaenopsis, I doubt if I'd ever lose one. The only time I'd lose one is if it had some sort of infection, probably when I got it, or it was a lousy plant when I got it and had no roots. Not that we ever buy a plant like that. I can't imagine buying a plant that you take it out of the pot and it's got no roots. Huh. Yeah. So, if you narrow your genera choices, and within those you stick to the stuff that's the easier sort of thing like that. The store-bought Phalaenopsis are about as easy as you can get. The only time they're not is a lot of people have trouble with them growing them in greenhouses, and the reason is often the watering. It's not the plant's fault, it's the fact that people go around with hoses watering things and they get the plants soaking wet. And a Phalaenopsis should naturally be growing sideways so that any water just runs out between the leaf joints. It doesn't hold the water. But we silly people try and stick them bolt upright in the pot. But that's not how they grow. And if you stick them bolt upright in the pot, you've got a little vase in the centre. And also, just remember those people who do decide to go round with the hose, try measuring the temperature of the water that comes out of the end of your tap. It's freezing for plants. You do that on, oh, my greenhouse is half hot today, it's nearly up to 30 degrees. I'll cool it down. Yeah? It's not the best of ideas. Yes, it may cool it down. You can do cell damage to narrow leaf plants. And possibly the fleshy ones as well. You put freezing cold water on them like that in that sort of temperature. That's not what happens. If you're out in the tropics and you get those tropical rainstorms, people go out like that in the rain with their shirt off. That's just the women. Because the rain is not cold. Yeah? Here it is. See how high it comes down from. You know, there's ice on the plane's wings up there. So, yeah. But if you limit what you've got, and every one of those plants suits your environment properly, right in the middle, right in that centre ground, you're highly unlikely to ever lose anything. Yeah? But when you venture off and you creep into areas that your environment is struggling with, you will get some losses. That has to be an acceptable part of the hobby, I'm afraid, because it doesn't matter how long you've been growing and how good you are, you will still get some losses. We're just talking about percentage here. If you're losing 10% of your orchids every year, something's not right, it's too many. I mean, I had a massive clear out, nice of the long knives. I forget how many got gone, but I reckon it was heading up towards 50 plants. Well, when you've only got 250, that's a huge number. Those plants in the main were struggling, not lost. I could have struggled on and some of those would have come back. But with me, there comes a time where the bother factor, I just can't be. I just can't be bothered with things that struggle to grow for whatever reason. I'd rather put the efforts and concentrate on the workload that goes with things that are going to grow reasonably well for me and bloom. Again, to me, there's no point in having you if you don't bloom. There are a few plants I might just about put up with because they're pretty plants. Like some of the Paphiopedilums have got gorgeous patterned leaves. Some of the Psychopsis, lovely patterned leaves. There's even a few Phalaenopsis that have got lovely leaves. But in the main, orchids tend to be green. So you've heard me refer to the sea of green. That just basically means it's orchids with been blooms on. And I've just noticed the spike on my, I think it's the only one I've got left now, even though there's two. My only Phalaenopsis type Dendrobium, Thai Angel. That spike is now 9 inches long with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can see 6 buds so far. So that's going to bloom. Now that was split. I took the back end of the plant off and potted it up separately, and quite honestly the back end's got a better root system than the front end at the moment. But they've both got roots now that they didn't have before, and they both seem to be doing okay. So I've saved those. The white one that was Hannah's just went down. Never had a good root system when we got it. We had a place near where Hannah lives, very huge garden centre, that had a very large orchid section, and I don't know where they were getting them from, but they were getting them in fresh, And to them, they only stayed in that sales area for about a week, 10 days. After that, they got moved to the discount centre. And they were selling double-spiked Phalaenopsis. Now, okay, all the blooms were open. You don't know how long they'd all been open, but no buds to go. And sometimes flowers were starting to fade. But they were selling them for £2.50 with double spikes on, still in bloom. So once Hannah realised she couldn't really grow much in her place, apart from a few Phalaenopsis, when she did a living area up, she only wanted white to go with the colours. So we used to call in there and just get a large white Phalaenopsis to go on the table in a nice ornamental pot, so that she had a live plant rather than a plastic one. And for £2.50, if it only lasts a fortnight, it's just not bad going, is it? And their more expensive discount ones were £5. And sometimes you've got a decorative pot with that as well, to be thrown away because we don't like those, or I don't. Yeah, so venture away from your common ground by all means, because that's to me is what makes it a proper hobby. If I'd chosen a few genera and a few types within that and stayed with it over the last 10 years, I'd have probably packed the hobby in by now, because I'd have got so bored with it. I need some challenges, and I need something different. And then when I come back and I centralise my mind into how my care works out here, it's not actually any different. So although in my mind, you know, like I've gone for the Renantheras, it's a new genera, ooh, that's not. How does it get treated? Same as the Vandas. So it's not really that new, is it? They like the bright light. You know, they don't like to stay dry too long. They like, you know, fast wet dry cycle. Oh, surely I've just said the care for a Vanda and some other things. So the types of care out here are not that varied. There's three, really. There's fast wet dry cycle that's not in a pot. There's fast wet dry cycle that's in a pot. That tends to be the holy clay pots. And then there's those that are in a pot that are not a fast wet dry cycle but do like to dry. And that's nearly everything else. And then there's the cooler, shadier types that shouldn't really dry out for anything but the shortest amount of time. And the rest of their care is merely a matter of placement. And that's for the light. And sometimes for airflow. This beastie up here, if this seems to, I've placed this in various places, and if it loses its airflow, it starts to fade. It's not happy. It's coming back from one of those fades now, where I moved it. And it wasn't getting the fan. Now it is, it's shooting out all over the place. That's Dendrobium senile, Mr. Hairy. Yeah, so sometimes the placement is for airflow. A lot of the time it's nothing more than light. I don't place things for humidity because they all get it. With the circulating fans and Hurricane Hector down there on the floor, the hydrofogger, any humidity that throws out is instantly dispersed to the whole airspace. So I don't position anything for humidity. Temperatures, it's a bit lower. The nearer the floor, slightly lower temperature. The nearer the roof, slightly higher temperature. But with those big circulating fans on the go, there's not much difference. So positioning is mainly for light. Yeah, so that's my thing. And you know, there is quite an assortment out here. Some struggles a bit. If it struggles badly, the chances are it's not here anymore. It's already been dumped. Because as I said, I've had a rationale that now says you don't get long unless you're incredibly special. You don't get long. You either manage to exist in here or you don't. And if you don't, then you're not here anymore. You're gone. So be it. So weather stations and weather predictions are on the go at the moment as I speak, and it may be that I'm off out tomorrow round to a friend's house, in which case I shall film that growing space, which is pretty big and pretty spectacular. And in that growing space there's probably more things like RHS awards in one confined space than you can find in anywhere else. The guy's got so many RHS awards. There's a lot. Grows well and has been doing so an awful long time, and has a lot of really good specimen plants. I doubt if there'll be much in bloom, but that doesn't stop us having a look at the plants. That's Alan. His wife is the catering manager for Wessex Orchid Society, who makes the cakes. Yay! So we may get cake tomorrow. And Lynn will be there. You know Lynn from her own channel, Masdevallius Draculas and Dendrobiums in the main. Yeah. And also separate growing environments. So she has got that cooler growing environment and then an intermediate one. So the separation's there. I've only got the one. So, but anyway, that is a plan for tomorrow that may or may not take place depending on weather predictions, and we'll chop and change the plans for those weather predictions, and then whatever weather they said was going to happen just won't, because they are, in my book, with rain, certainly in this area where I live, if they say I'm going to get rain, they are wrong far more times than they are right, if you see what I mean. I'd say 5 or 6 times out of 7 or 8 times they're wrong. So when they say it's going to rain, I wait till I see it, because most of the time I just don't believe it. I just think, well, it's not going to happen. It hasn't happened the last 3 times you've said it's going to rain, so why should it now? And tomorrow morning is shown a band of showers coming across the south coast that should clear our area by lunchtime. Now it could be late starting out, yeah, or it could be early because the wind speed's increased a little bit, or it might just blow itself out and not happen at all. This is this, you know, it's always difficult. But the visit has to be planned on being outside. You know, we've got 3 separate households coming together, so we need to be outside and socially distanced. You know, as per safety stuff and all that. Even if the government didn't say that, I'd still want that, you know. Like if I'm going to go and have a look round Alan's greenhouses, I don't want anyone else in there at the same time, because I'm now in a confined space with narrow places to walk between plants and things. So we'll take it in turns to go in there. He can walk along outside pointing at things going, that's my so-and-so and that's my so-and-so, and look at my, you know, and he can do that from the other side of the glass. We shall see. It may or may not take place. We shall see. But I do have orchids to pack today, and I've even got a box on the dining room table ready to start. That's going to be Insa's box that may have to go on hold until tomorrow, on the grounds that if this meeting does take place, Lynn has got a plant for Insa. So I need to keep the box open. But that doesn't stop me packing the orchids today. I just need to not close up the box. Yeah, and then all the rest of the plants are just 1s and 2s, so they'll be quite easy to do. And the next ones that will get done are the UK ones, because they probably won't go in the post till Tuesday, maybe even, and they'll still get there. They still won't be on hold. I've got one that sounds a bit iffy, because looking at the postage rules here, let alone there, I think it was Sweden, that actually says we will deliver to the postal depot nearest to where that person lives. So it sounds like they won't deliver to the actual house. So whoever that is going to have to go and get it. Well, that's what it sounds like from this end. What actually happens in the other country, I know nothing about. But I think that's the one that said it needs the mobile number on there. Otherwise, you have a job to find where your parcel is, and they ring you. We will see if that's what's required. I can certainly get that done this end. So packaging today, I had a look. Insa's box, the 2 awkward plants are this one. Yeah. Gosh, why is it awkward? Well, it's awkward because of these kikis down here. But in a packed box, they don't have to be down there. They can be up there. Yeah. And when you're looking at packing, roots will bend without snapping, so, but that top cane won't, and that's a new cane that's still growing. So that's the length of the plant, and I measured it, and it's less than 2 feet, and the box I've got is 2 foot long. and Insa will probably watch this. You will have to take care, because the chances are you're going to want to take those kikis off, because they are now as long as the longest cane on the plant. Yeah? So these kikis have grown on incredibly well and are still growing and have a massive root system. Yeah? Those are either two separate plants or plants to be planted up separately, I would suggest. They can come off any time, but take great care, because recently that kiki has started a new growth at the base. So that's starting to become a plant in its own right, because it's now growing from the base. Yeah? So take care when you separate them that you don't lose that new growth. Delicate. But yeah, so you know that's basically dictates the size of the box. And the other one that's going to insert that also dictates the size of the box is this one. Is it this one? No, it's not that one. That's the one that's staying. So that means it's the next one, which is not so easy to get out. It's got to come out, so it just will come out now and stay out, hasn't it? It's going to get packed in the box today. And this is the that last one was Linguelli, Dendrobium Linguelli. This one is Dendrobium primulinum. This one, its length is dictated by its longest cane. That's an old cane that won't bloom. So if that stops me getting it in the box, I will chop it to get it in the box. It's not worth putting a bigger box out to get the last 3 inches of a cane that's already bloomed and won't bloom again, if you see what I mean. So I wouldn't take the whole cane off, because it's still a storage area. But this one has grown 4 new growths this year. It hasn't grown them all incredibly well, but it is currently pushing out some new roots. This is an odd time of year to do that, but that's what it's doing. But this is the longest cane it's grown. This will definitely bloom, but and this one is still growing. But the other canes on here, the 3 shorter ones, have all finished growing. They've all got their terminal leaves. Now they may still have a few blooms next year. There's a strength in the plant to do that, but they're not full-size canes. But this one will be, despite its S shape. That's a light issue, I suspect. Yeah, it probably grew out towards the light, and then I moved it, and it started to go down again. But that longest cane is still growing. No terminal leaf there yet. So those two determine the size of the box. Everything else can go in around them because it's other stuff. What is it? Oh, it's the Lodigessii. That's that big. That's the size of the mount with a few bits sticking out. So that's not large. And the rest are either kikis or pots. Some undisclosed, because you're not going to know until you open the box. Yes, there's some surprises in there. I'll let you know what one of them is. Let's say a cryptic quiz. You know what colour traffic lights are? Yeah? Well, in the UK, yeah? Well, Inch's got some traffic lights, but he's got one missing. So we'll fill in the gap, shall we? So you've got all 3 traffic lights. And some other stuff. Right, so that'll do for today. Coffee's cold, so I know the video's plenty long. Oh, actually, we've decided it does tell me how long, 34 minutes-ish, with a bit on the front and a bit on the back. Right, so Jen McCallum, send me an email, please. Your plant is on hold until I hear from you. And that's a UK address as well, so if you can let me know, like today, it'll be in the post probably tomorrow or the day after. That's that. And in advance, plants to go people, don't start doing money until you're told or asked to do so. Until I've posted these, I don't know what the postage costs are. Yeah. So once a box has been posted and I've got the receipt with the amount of the postage on it, I can go back, have a look at whatever the charge was for what you're getting in your box, add the postage on, send you an email, and in that email you will have my PayPal details. And I'll say it now, I'll probably end up saying it many times, and including in the email. When you pay by PayPal, make sure you pay a friend. Don't do a business transaction, because if you do a business transaction, I get charged fees. So just as though you were sending some money to one of your offspring as a birthday present, send to a friend. There are then no charges and no fees. There may be some sort of conversion element if you're transferring money to a different currency, like the UK ones. I will pay in pounds and I'll get paid in pounds, so that all works. But with the rest of the EU, obviously when you pay me, you're paying me in euros. But I do believe on PayPal now, you can choose the currency to pay in. So you can actually pay in pounds, because that's what your bill will be in. It will be in pounds. I don't know what it is in euros. And it'll change every day anyway, doesn't it? It's nearly 1 for 1 now, so it's not a big deal. Oh dear. What a state our money's in now. Well, state everything's in. Anyway, so I may have a visit. That'll have a nice video to go with it. Well, when I get back and process it. I have another experiment on the go that the video won't be completed for a couple of days. So yeah, but just stop and think when you're looking at buying an orchid, does it fit in with what you've already got, or are you branching out a little? Yeah. Now that can happen even with an intergeneric. Yeah. You know you may have a couple of oncidium types, couple of dancing ladies, and this, that, and the other, and you see an intergeneric and you think, oh, that's absolutely gorgeous, I'll have that, and suddenly you've gone off track without necessarily knowing it. Oh, hang on, I just need to move a few things. For instance, if you see blooms that look similar to this, they're probably going to have a reasonable amount of Miltonia in there. That makes them relatively tolerant. They don't mind too much, a fair bit of light, but not too much. They're temperature tolerant, everything's fine. But then you see another intergeneric right next to it, and it's got blooms that look like that. And you are highly probable to have just ventured down the odontoglossum path. That's going to be a cool grower, depending on the percentage. Yeah. Now, some people struggle with percentages, even when they can find out what the hell their plant is made up of. But, have a look on Orchid Roots. Put your plant name into Orchid Roots. Or better still, the way I do it, is I put my plant name into Google, my hybrid name, so whatever, Brassidium so-and-so, so-and-so, stick that into Google, and look down the list and look for Orchid Roots, because if it's a registered hybrid, it will be on the list. Down that list somewhere will be Orchid Roots. That way you can click on it without having to type. It'll just go straight there. And it'll show you the Ancestry. And I was looking at one, don't know whether it was one of mine or whether I was looking at it for somebody else. But it had a very complex history. In fact, it was one of mine. It was the one that originally arrived as a Dialalia, and it's now Corlocatlia or something like that. That's its name now. But its ancestry has got 2 chains, and it's got, starting down at the bottom of the Cattleya end, it's got some species, and then hybrids that are crossed with hybrids, and gradually it crawls up the chain until it gets to the top one, where it's crossed with a species. So over on this side of the plant, the Cattleya side, are many, many plants. Yeah? Well, the most there can be in there is 50%. Yeah? But then that has been hybridized with a species. So there's 50% of that species in the plant. It is dominant. All these bits and pieces down this chain here fade into insignificance compared with what it's just been crossed with at that point. Now sometimes that cross may have happened lower down and there's less of a percentage. But I wonder whose idea that was. All that complex Cattleya stuff going in there. I think there were about 5 species involved. at some stage, yeah? Not obviously at the bottom. At the bottom, you could say, well, we started with a species and a hybrid. Well, that's not the bottom then, is it? Because you need to get down lower than the hybrid to actually find out how that started. But all hybrids end up down the bottom with 2 species. But half the time you can never find that out. So, yeah. Yeah, but that was a complex half to the plant. And the other half was not complex, it was just a species. So as far as the care for that plant is concerned, it's give or take a little bit, whatever the care for that species is. Because that's half of the plant. And the other half is so diverse, the diversity becomes almost irrelevant as far as care is concerned. You know, there could be an extremely high light, full sun Laelia in amongst that other half. It doesn't matter. It'll be like 6% or 15%. It doesn't matter. That'll be washed out by the 50% of the species that's got whacked in there at the last minute. Yeah, so choose wisely when you're buying your orchids. Try and get good plants. I know it's not always possible. Not everybody can get to a nursery. Not everybody can get to shows. Some people are limited to online only, and that is probably the most difficult. But you can get to trust sellers. Things like Facebook are pretty good for, you know, I'm thinking of buying some plants from this nursery. Anybody got any experience? And you know, everybody loves to say how it was for them, especially if it was either up the good end or up the bad end. In the middle don't matter so much, but I had some lovely plants from this place. I had some right from them. You get those extremes, and those discussions are great on Facebook. That's one of the good things about Facebook. One of the few, I suppose. Those discussions can easily take place and people can chip in on them. So it's not so easy on YouTube, obviously. It's not meant to be for that sort of thing. Discussions, I mean. You know, it's more for comments and questions with an answer. I mean, I go through my comments back 3 videos. In the morning, I scroll back to the start of 3 videos ago. Yeah? And then I scroll forward again because somebody may put a question in, I put an answer in the next day, and then later that day they have a look at the answer and ask another question. Well, if I don't scroll back, I miss those, and it looks like I'm ignoring people. But I only go back 3, not all day. So, yeah, but YouTube's not so good for that sort of thing. So, Jen McCallum, please get in touch. Now, it could be on holiday and not watching YouTube. You know, there's all sorts of reasons. Could have changed email address and not told me, so the email I've sent has just gone down a black hole. You know, that happens. Take care with your choices. You keep your losses at a minimum. If all the plants you've got, you can quite happily sit back in your armchair with your glass of wine, your whiskey, your cup of coffee, your cup of tea, your glass of orange juice, and say, I know what I'm doing with my orchids. You're probably not going to lose that many, and if you do, it'll be an adverse thing that's come in, you know, like a really fungus or something like that. But again, if your environment's pretty clean and you've got air movement and stuff, those things don't happen that often, really. They happen in places like this where the humidity's high, and at times the air is constant. It's not changed. I'm not getting any fresh air in, so that's my own fault then, isn't it? Yeah. Right, I will see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Hope you've enjoyed the chat. And I always leave this till the end because I suspect about 2/3 of the people that started watching this video don't hear this bit because they bailed out. I can tell from my stats. I know what you're up to. But if you are watching and you're not subscribed yet and you think you may come back, please hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything and your world doesn't alter one iota. But mine does. It helps the channel. So if you're not subscribed, please think about doing so. And thanks for your time. See you next time.